to the Titletown Huddle on the gruelingtruth.net.
Welcome to the Titletown Huddle at the gruelingtruth.net, where the legends speak. I'm Joe Pritchard, and with me is Aaron Zepnik. And Aaron, are you feeling a little bit better about things after this past week's game?
Yes and no. Great to see that we can get out to a lead, but I'd like to see that killer instinct. I don't like the conservativeness. I think that's a major concern for fans. And, when you have a team down 31-3 at halftime, you can't let them back within a score or two, especially in the NFL. You need to put teams away.
Yeah, I think most of Packerland would definitely be behind you on that one. I believe the final score was 34-27. Am I correct on that?
Yep.
And 31-3 halftime lead. Well, that means the Lions beat us in the second half, 24-3. So that's not exactly the outcome we were hoping for going into the half that high. We'll take the victory, but you got to put teams away when you got a chance. Actually kind of reminded me of a game from way back. I think it was 95 where the Lions stormed back from way down, almost a similar scenario here with Dave Craig at quarterback. They got a little bit closer to winning, though. They were actually trying to go for the game-tying touchdown very near the end here. I don't think the Lions got that close on us this time around.
Absolutely. There's also a game in Mike McCarthy's tenure that brings me back to a couple of them, actually. One, I think we were leading the Kansas City Chiefs by 17 at home at halftime. We ended up losing that game. And then another one is the NFC Championship a couple of years ago with Seattle. We were up, should have put that game away as well. And, a special teams blunder and a few special teams blunders, and, we ended up losing that one as well, so.
It harkens back to some less than happy days. But the first half, of course, was definitely a nice spark to see. Aaron Rodgers seemed to take the criticism in stride and threw the first half right back into his critics' faces this past week.
Absolutely, and I think it was a good sign to see Jordy and Aaron connect a few times there in the first half, and I still want to see more of Ty Montgomery and Jared Abbrederis out there, both really good on special teams. I'm sure we'll talk about Ty's brilliant manipulation of the kick out of bounds rule later on in the show, but I'd like to see a little bit more of the spread 5 wide, putting them guys out there. I see them split Eddie Lacy out a lot, and he's not a real matchup issue for any team. If anything, he's taking, their linebackers going with him, and, it's really not a threat because nobody's running the ball, so they can spread out a linebacker there, and they can kind of cheat coverages to the outside receivers that are not Eddie Lacy. He's not going to beat anybody in a pass route, and I'm not a fan of that formation. If you're going to go empty, put 5 wides out there, put Randall Cobb out there and Abbrederis and Montgomery in the slot, and then Adams and Jordy out wide. You don't need to be putting a running back out there, in my opinion.
Yeah, let's go ahead and run that exact personnel package you were talking about. And then if you want to show the threat of the run, put Cobb in the backfield. You've seen that he can do that in the past. They at least have to respect the ability for a run there. And then you still have your top guys out on the field as far as pass catching goes. You can go a lot of different ways with that.
Absolutely, and Cook went down obviously in the Detroit game, but what I'd like to see even is put Jordy and Devontae on one side and put, say, your 2 best blocking receivers or tight ends, put Cook and Rodgers out on the right side, Richard Rodgers, motion Cobb out of the backfield to their side, throw in that little bubble screen, and let your tight ends go block corners and safeties. I think that would be a huge, matchup problem where you get a couple of those big tight ends blocking, and maybe there's a linebacker out there, but a tight end should be able to block a linebacker all day long. So you get a 3-on-2 or a 3-on-3 situation. Now Cobb's in space. He makes one guy miss, and he's got a big gain.
Yeah, and then you show that, you run that bubble screen a couple times, you get the defense going that way. When they see that formation, you come back to the other side to Jordy on a back shoulder throw. I like that idea too.
Absolutely. And you can run Adams on a post or something down the seam, and if they jump Jordy, then you go to Adams. If they jump Adams, you throw the ball to Jordy. I mean, teams can't really double anybody that way either. I mean, they can, but you're leaving yourself very open to being beat with a big play on either side of the field.
Right, and what we're salivating about the offense, let's talk about what Eddie Lacy was able to accomplish this past week here. I was seeing some flashes of the old Eddie Lacy here, a couple of big runs here, and that got the ball rolling for the Packers in the first half.
Absolutely, he looked fresh. He looked like he was running downhill like normal. Now, I'm not as quick to be happy with it because the Detroit Lions were a little banged up at linebacker, and it's the Detroit Lions. They're not known for the run defense anymore since Sue left, and they don't have a dominant front seven like some teams do. And I still think that I expected Eddie to go off for over 100 yards, but I'm a little bit reserved and being excited about the running game because it was against a banged-up Lions front seven.
All right, and of course we want to talk about Ty Montgomery using the rule book to the Packers' advantage here. That speaks to good coaching to me, for him to have the wherewithal to realize that the ball was near the sidelines, get out of bounds, and then touch the ball as he is out of bounds, making the kickoff out of bounds and switching the field position by about 40 yards.
Absolutely, and he did it the right way because he went out of bounds in the end zone. So if the ball touches him, it's a touchback, and if it touches him when he's on the end zone side of the pylon, then he scooted up and he grabbed the ball. It's a little bit dangerous because if you miss the ball, there's somebody that's there from Detroit that can recover it. I'll be honest, I'm a high school official, and I believe, and I have to check with my crew on Friday night, but in high school I believe that ball's still in bounds. I believe that it's where the ball is, not where the player is in the high school. So I actually was misinterpreting the rule, and I thought that he made a huge mistake and we were going to get the ball at the 2 or 3 yard line there where he touched it. And then when I heard that, I was like, wow, I don't think they got that right. So I'm going to double-check with my high school crew where I officiate with, but the NFL in high school has so many different rules with clock. Everything is extremely different. So I'm going to double-check that as well, but it hasn't come out that they got it wrong this week, so I'm assuming NFL rule means if any part of the player is touching out of bounds and the ball touches him, it's out of bounds at that point. The ball is considered out of bounds.
Yeah, and I do believe I saw the people over at Football Zebras who know much more about officiating than I ever will. They were making a big deal about the heads-up play, so their interpretation of the rule was the same as the crew's, and I believe that was correct here. Now, there's a reason, though, that NFL officials are lawyers, because that rule book can get very interesting at times.
Yeah, it's quite thick. It's never really accessible. I do a lot of, semi-pro football, which goes by NFL rules as well, and we don't have a hard copy of the NFL rules. Like, you can go get a PDF from last year. It's always a year behind, it seems, and there's never a clear-cut, manual that you can just print out and go through, and that's kind of been a frustration as well, because you have new rules being added every year, and for the average fan, they probably don't care. They're like, oh, I'll take the word for it. They're getting paid that much to officiate. But for the officials and the coaches and the guys that actually want to keep up with the fine print rules or the additions or the adaptions or the alterations of new rules, it would be nice to – I would buy a copy of the NFL rulebook just to have it so that if there's ever a debate, I can look it up for myself.
Right. Instead of taking the word for the officials on TV, whether they're in the booth or on the field, or having to use other sources to come up with the information here. Now, that's one of the frustrations I have as a fan too. Is sometimes you will see something, and there will be some rule that is they're not often used that will all of a sudden come out and change what you just saw happen and change it into something that really kind of feels like, oh, nothing to see here. You didn't see what you just saw. Right. I believe the tuck rule falls under this, although they are limited at that. But there have been others over the years where you just shake your head and go, where did they come up with that, and why did that change what I just saw?
Absolutely. So, I mean, good for Ty Montgomery, though. It worked out to their advantage, and it changed field position after a score, which is huge. So, especially with the touchback rule and people trying to pin people deep now, teams are trying to kick it higher. And although I've been quite surprised, Crosby's been mostly banging them out of the end zone, and I don't know if that's, by design, saying, okay, Dom Capers, his belief, I think, his philosophy, just from seeing him long enough now in Green Bay, his philosophy is bend but don't break. We'll give up, some plays, but we're going to stop the run, try to limit the big plays, and hold teams to field goals or less. And I'm assuming his belief is if I kick it out of the end zone, you can't drive 75 yards on us all day long. So I guess, as long as that works, I'm happy.
Right, and that does take it out of the special teams' hands to have to make a play every time. Now, just one or two big returns in a game can completely swing momentum. So I could certainly understand giving away that 5 yards, because it seems like the Packers are willing to give away 5 yards most every play when they're ahead, as evidence in the second half. We saw a lot of, from what I could tell, a lot of zone defense, a lot of soft zone, and the Lions picked it apart. And once again, they had kind of a flashback to the Vikings game. There was one receiver that just torched the Packers secondary.
Yeah, and, look, Sam Shields being out is huge, but these other guys, have been around now. This is their second year for Demarius Randall, and no Morgan Burnett hurts as well. But I didn't see HaHa Clinton Dix have a good game. I didn't see anyone else really step up and make plays when they needed to be made. And, the big thing, you have to find the next man up. Like in 2010, they had a lot of injuries. The next guy up played well. Jared Bush in the Super Bowl, when he came in for Charles Woodson, had a very good second half. And he wasn't a popular Packer by no means. He had his blunders himself in his career here. But I look at our depth and I wonder how good our secondary is if we're continuing to give up big plays on defense, to one receiver. Like, eventually, don't you have to roll coverage to him and take him away and say, okay, you got to beat us with someone else?
Yeah, you would think so. I think that's where the loss of Shields hurts, is that there's nobody that they seem to be able to rely on to shut a guy down when he's starting to go off. I even got so frustrated with Randall during the late third and early fourth quarter that I was starting to question whether he could actually do the job. Probably a gut reaction and a emotional reaction to it, but it just seemed like he had no answers.
Yeah, and I don't think it's for lack of effort. I think he's trying too hard to come up and make plays. And I saw at least twice where they ran it's called a bench or a smash concept, in a cover two soft zone like that. The outside guy will run the hitch or the slant, and the inside guy, the number 2 receiver they call him, will run a 7 or a corner route. And I saw at least 2 or 3 times in the game where Randall tried to jump the hitch or the slant, and they threw that 7 route right over the top of him, right behind him, and he's like, oh, that's my zone. And the linebackers got hooked a curl. So the linebackers out in his area, and we have 2 guys jumping that hitch or slant, and we have nobody covering the 7, and the safety can't get there. So, and they were beating them up pretty good on the announcer. The announcers even knew. I'm not even sure who the announcers were, but I think one was John Lynch, and they were talking about him biting on that short receiver instead of being in his zone where he should have been. And it's tough as an outside corner to play the cover 2 disciplined and to get back on that 7 route. So that's why teams run a lot of smash versus cover 2.
Right. It seems to be the exact type of play that would exploit that. And Randall's reaction, if what Capers was doing was playing soft, was exactly the opposite of what the defensive concept was. You do want to keep the gains minimal when you have a big lead like that, especially if you're not going to be bringing extra pressure. But he was trying to, like you were saying, jump the route, trying to take away the short yardage when that's what you're willing to give up as a defense that's up 28 points at the half. So the issue, the biggest issue I have with what we're talking about here is he needs to be maybe a little bit more mentally into what the defensive concept is, more so than what the exact assignment is. Because if they're trying to play soft, if they're trying to play back, and you have a guy jumping that, leaving a wide open hole, it defeats the entire purpose.
Yeah, and I have another explanation for it, and it's probably lengthy, but making a long story short, and this is going to sound harsh, and this may not be at all where Demarius' head is at, but it looks to me like he got beat up against Stephon Diggs the week before, and he was trying to be a hero and make a play on the short route versus just doing his assignment. Just do your job. Don't worry about being a hero. He wanted to come up and get a pick or make the big tackle or whatever his intentions were. I think that's more of a, I got to make something happen so people stop talking about me, where it really backfired. Now they're talking really a lot more about, his coverage skills or his, where he's at in his zone and stuff like that. I think a lot of people are losing faith in him, and it's a shame because I think he's a good young corner and I think he's got a lot to learn, but I think hoping that he can grasp the concepts or grasp just doing his job, his assignment, and get it done. I think that'll probably be a talk that they have for a couple weeks and watch a lot of film, and I would suspect that he would learn from the mistakes, and you'll see a better Demarius Randall going forward.
I think the bye week comes at a good time for him and at a good time for the Packers here, as they've been nursing quite a few injuries. We've mentioned Sam Shields a few times. Clay Matthews was out this week as well. Morgan Burnett, they could really use this bye week already on defense. It really feels very early for a bye week, but I guess I can't complain as to where it falls on the schedule.
Absolutely, and Jared Cook went down. I think there was an offensive lineman I thought that got a little banged up. I forget which one it was now. But, yeah, we definitely, Pennell's going to be back from his suspension. I look for a lot more depth on the front seven. And, yeah, the injury front, Clay Matthews, hopefully that's not something that lingers all year. It seems like he's really been dinged and just minor injuries have taken a major toll on his production in the last couple of years.
Right, because they will add up quickly here, where if you're not healthy in many parts of your body, it's hard to be able to drive it all forward. Just hoping that it's a minor thing and he's back after the bye ready to go. But we'll go ahead and take a quick break here. We'll come back and we'll discuss a little bit about the show and how things are going so far. Back in just a moment.
Get in the Titletown Huddle with Joe Pritchard and Aaron Zepnick on thegruelingtruth.net.
Welcome back to the Titletown Huddle. Aaron, you let me know last night that the Titletown Huddle show's Facebook page is over 200 followers.
Yes, sir. In just a few weeks, we've, I created the page after week one, I believe, or going into week one. So in 3 weeks, basically, we've achieved, surpassed 200 likes I've been sharing the page and inviting people to like the page and adding friends and stuff. And now I get more friend requests from Packer fans. So I think people are spreading the word, and it's exciting because who knows where it could go. I know Packer fans have the Packers have a huge following all over the world. I've had some Packer fans from out of state, South Carolina, Arizona, all over the place actually, messaging me some questions to ask on the show, asking about guests and stuff. The interaction is picking up, and I love it. I'm excited for it.
That's really good to hear. And you did mention that there was at least one question that people wanted us to answer. So let's go ahead and take care of that while we're at it.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna actually give you word for word what the question was and who it was from. The gentleman's name was Larry Lucas, and he messaged me saying, "Will Starks be staying with the Packers, or will there be a new back soon?" I'll let you answer that one, Joe.
Okay. Well, I would think that he's entrenched for this season. I don't have any reason to believe that the Packers would want to go outside of what they have set up already to go get another back. Starks knows the system and has been performing in the system. And Ted Thompson is not one to just go out randomly and find a guy if he has no reason to. So I think Starks is set for this year. I don't know what his contract status is for next year, but if he were to be an impending free agent, he's starting to get to the point where an NFL back is going to start losing some of their productivity. He was drafted in 2010, so this is his 7th year in the league, so that puts him around the 30-year-old mark. Then again, he doesn't have a lot of wear on him. He hasn't been a consistent starter, so he may have another year or two in him. I wouldn't expect to see him in 3 or 4 years, but I would say it's a fairly good bet you'll see him at least competing for a job next year in camp.
Absolutely, and I like your point about the wear and tear. He has not really ever been, other than the 2010 playoff year, the featured back. He's been the featured back. He never really had the 280, 300 carry season. I would have to look up his most carries in a season, but The thing that I think shows us they're going to keep Starks at least through this year is, look, they brought C.J. Spiller in for a workout. They didn't sign him. C.J. Spiller actually is working out with the Jets, I believe, this week. Went and visited New York. The fact that they let him even go and do that, I think C.J. Spiller would have been a great fit here. We need a third down back like that also returns kicks and stuff, but I think Ty Montgomery will be fine, and with the way that the touchbacks are happening early in the season, I don't think there's a huge need for a C.J. Spiller right now. So if they couldn't get him at the veterans minimum, I doubt they were going to give him what he was looking for. I think that's probably part of it. But James Starks is not a bad backup running back. He's obviously the number 2 man, and people got excited because Spiller came in. They let that Presley go that they picked up from Minnesota, and no C.J. Spiller to be signed. So that tells me we're standing behind Lacey and Starks, and those will be the 2 backs that flank Rodgers in the backfield.
All right, so if you have questions for us, definitely come find us over at the Titletown Huddle page on Facebook. Otherwise, you can also reach the show. I am also on Twitter under the handle Titletown Huddle. I believe, Aaron, you're also under a Titletown Huddle Twitter handle as well, and I can be found on Twitter as well with my normal account, USFL Tecmo. So feel free to send those questions over here. We're happy to answer them. We'll also be debuting a feature this next week. We'll go ahead and ask a question that we'd like you to respond to on our Facebook page. Haven't come up with the question yet, but we should have that up probably sometime in the next day or so. So go ahead and give that question an answer here, and we'll read it on next week's show.
Sounds great, Joe. One little thing. I'm a stat guy, as you know, as a coach and Packer fan. I've always kind of like looked at the stats, and I like to look week to week where they're at. And something that's really disturbing to me is points per game, 25. Granted, our offense hasn't clicked yet for a full game, but if you were to have to guess where the Packers were in passing yards for, so in other words, per game, how many passing yards do you think we're averaging a game, and where do you think that puts us in the NFL?
They've had a rough couple of weeks with the passing game. Rodgers isn't racking up a bunch of numbers each week, although he did look a lot better this past week. I would say they're probably in the 230-ish range, not having looked. And I would say they're probably around the 20th in the league mark is my guess.
You're going to be astounded by this. They're averaging 193.3 a game, and they're 29th in the NFL in passing offense.
That Minnesota game took a lot bigger of a chunk out of it than I thought it did.
Absolutely, and the fact is Aaron Rodgers. I know we talked about the comparison to the last 8 games of Blaine Gabbert last week, and Aaron Rodgers has had his flashes of greatness, obviously, like the first half on Sunday, but what's concerning to me is I feel like the window's closing with him. I feel like he's already, I don't want to say on the downside or on declining, but he's already shown signs of slowing down. He had his few years of greatness where he won MVPs and stuff, and I don't know if it's that teams have figured out our offense a little more, our passing route combinations, or if it's the offensive line. But I thought our offensive line played phenomenal on Sunday in the first half. I don't think Aaron was touched. But I'm just afraid that, this is a trend that's going to continue, not go away. And, you got some defenses here in the NFC. You got Carolina, Minnesota, Arizona. They're all pretty stout defenses. When we get to the playoffs, can Aaron Rodgers win us a Super Bowl?
Well, there you go. Yeah, the next 2 weeks, I believe they have they have the bye week, of course, but I believe they have the Giants and the Bears coming up here. And I'm forgetting who that last home game is, because they have 4 home games in 5 weeks with the bye week in there. So I think we're going to get that answer as to whether this is a long-term trend in the next couple of weeks.
I hope so, and I hope it's not a long-term trend, obviously. I don't want to make Packer fans panic, but, it's just something that you go back to last year and, the holding the ball too long and trying to extend plays to make a great, big play, that's all well and good when it works, but when it doesn't, you put yourself in long down and distances. So they have the Giants and the Cowboys the next 2 weeks at home, and then the Bears. So, obviously the bye week this week, and then the Giants on Sunday night, and then the Cowboys, and then the Bears. So
none of those defenses jump out at me as ones to be afraid of all that much. So I'm hoping that he can find a rhythm here with the 3 straight home games back to back to back after the bye. So we will see, though, whether that comes together or not here. Definitely, of course, on this show, we are hoping for that to go forward. But I guess we're starting to get close to that time here. Is there anything else we want to bring up this week?
No, I just want everyone to enjoy. At least we're into the bye week with a win. That's always nice to get that sour taste out of your mouth from Minnesota. Get that win going into the bye, so everyone has 2 weeks to kind of feel like, hey, we're 2-1 going into the bye. We got 3 more home games. If we can be sitting at 5-1, Minnesota will lose. Like they're not going to be the Carolina Panthers from last year. I don't think they'll be better than 12-4. Right now, I think the Packers will still win the NFC North, and hopefully they go on a little run here and, like I said, sit at 5-1 in the next 3 games and They always talk about breaking the season down into quarters. Well, after the Giants game, we're a quarter of the way through the season already. Isn't that something?
It is. It just feels like it started yesterday.
Yeah. So enjoy the ride. Let's have a good week off, and hopefully they can get healthy. Ripkowski and Cook and Shields and Matthews, all these guys that are banged up. Hopefully this came at the right time, and we can get back on the horse and get going.
Right, and for as much as it feels like we've been having not a lot of good things to say over the past couple of weeks, hey, they are 2-1. They are right now winning the majority of their games here, and we can just keep hoping that continues going forward.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, for Aaron Zepnick, my name is Joe Pritchard. You are listening to the Titletown Huddle at thegruelingtruth.net.
Thank you for listening to the Titletown Huddle on thegruelingtruth.net.